Dr. Quantum.
Good morning, bon après-midi, bonne nuit.
It's good to speak to you in French. Are we going to do this in French?
Peut-être, mais je préfère English.
Okay.
I would prefer to speak in English. My French is not so good.
I understand, and I'm sure a lot of people watching right now are agreeing. Let's do this in English. The topic
That's exactly what happened when I first started to teach in Paris. I was teaching at Alliance Française. I went to Alliance Française, and then afterwards I was teaching my class in quantum physics at the University of Paris Sud en Alsace or Seville. And while I was teaching, I was speaking French, and the students came up to me and they said, "Oh, Professor, would you please speak in English? We don't understand your French very well."
Yeah, and the topic
I was very
is
insulted.
and the topic is already, it's complicated
Yeah.
enough. So let's not add another shift to it. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today because, of course, you're a famous quantum physician, and I really enjoyed interviewing Joe Dispenza and Amit Goswami and others that were featured also in the Bleep, a movie that has been really, creating such a boom and an explosion of knowledge and of interest for this topic and this subject that is so important to understand. And I know that your latest book that is called Time Loops and Space Twist, you really put an emphasis on explaining what is time, what is space, what is matter. Tell us why those are really important questions and things that you wanted to bring out to the world.
Well, it's sometimes difficult to relate things like the very things we are made of to our everyday dramatic experiences. And that's basically what I'm trying to do. My big question was, how and why is the world the way it is? Why do people behave the way they do? Why is the world constructed the way it's constructed? And to answer those questions, I became very curious about how matter and energy and space and time all are related together. And that led me into what is called quantum physics. So for me, the question was, how do you connect up my everyday experience, my little life or my big life, to the events which are making the universe appear as it is? And the question leads one into naturally thinking about, why is there mind? Not only why is there something rather than nothing, but why is there a Dr. Quantum here to ask, why is there something rather than nothing? So there's two parts to the question. It's not just a question of why there is something rather than nothing, but why is there somebody who can ask that question? Because both of them are really kind of together. You can't have the question without somebody asking the question, and you can't have the asking of the question without somebody asking the question. So the two go hand in hand, and that's what interested me. How do you bring mind, consciousness, and matter and energy into an understanding which I think once we have, can improve our lives, make us happier individuals? And so that was really why I got into this whole business. And in discovering just how the universe is constructed, I came to the conclusion that it's very clear that it's not just an unintelligent mishmash of random Darwinian, totally chaoticness, but there's an order or an intelligence which must be present in order for this random, chaotic disorderliness to become not random, to become orderly, to become conscious, to become aware, to become alive. And so that's what led me into this whole business.
Yeah, tell us more about the quantum field theory. What does it say?
Well, in my latest book, The Time Loops and Space Twist, I got into this whole notion of what is called the quantum field theory. And what physicists are discovering right now is so bizarre, it almost sounds like we're talking about science fiction and not really science anymore. What they're discovering now is that there seems to be a field that comes into existence when, now get this, when space and time both come into existence, and that this field is something like a field of mind. It's not a field of matter, but it's a field of mind. And that mind field has to interact or play with the light and space and time that came into existence at the time of the Big Bang. And in so doing, it starts to emerge something we call an orderly universe and a consciousness which begins to perceive it all coming out. So the book Space, Time, and my book Time, Loops, and Space Twist goes into just how does that come about? What's making, how does the mind and how does that all come in together? And the current research right now is something called the search for the Higgs field. That's going on in your neighboring country of Switzerland at the place called CERN, which is the facility for investigating particle reactions at very high energy. They're looking for this field. They're looking for the particle of this field, which is called the Higgs, Higgs field. And so I became interested in how does that all work? And the conclusion I came to, and this is what the book is about, is that everything literally is made of light. But light has two forms, two basic kinds of ways in which it can exist. One is the ordinary way that we see with our eyes, which we see when the sun rises or when we turn on our lamps in our room. That's light we see. But there's another kind of light, which is a kind of funny, twisting, half-turning light. Almost like watching a diver that dives and does a half twist before she or he enters the water. There's another kind of light which is doing half twisting. And this half twisting kind of light interacts with this Higgs field, and it zigzags back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in such a way that it effectively seems to slow down. And when it slows down, it appears to have material substance. It appears as electrons and quarks, and finally all of the material that makes up the whole universe. It all comes from this relationship of this field of mind and this funny kind of light twisting with the ordinary kind of light emerging from it as a kind of a messenger sending messages back and forth. So the whole thing looks like a kind of like a hologram, a gigantic hologram. And currently now, I mean, there was a show we had called Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm sure it must have played in France as well. And when one of the funny shows had to do with a computer. They have a thing called the holograph room or the holo room or whatever it's called. And in that room, people could enter, and suddenly the room is filled with what seems to be a three-dimensional world in which they can interact. It could be, they could be on the beach, or they could be in the forest, or climbing a building, or whatever they're doing. And this particular character had decided to look at what is called Sherlock Holmesian kind of environment. And the character called Dr. Moriarty suddenly says, "Hey, I'm conscious. I'm leaving this holo room. I'm not going to stay in this room anymore." And so he walks out, and everybody says, "You can't do that because you're just a creation of mind. You can't go out to the physical world because you don't exist." And he walks out into the physical world, and they say, "Oh my God, mind into matter." Well, it turns out that the whole thing was taking place in the holo room. Even the illusion of walking out of the holo room was contained within the holo room. It was a holo room within a holo room within a holo room. And the guy who thinks he's doing all this eventually gets locked up into the little kind of cube, which is the end of the show. And we see one of the characters who's in the real so-called Enterprise vehicle saying, what are we going to do with the guy? Well, as long as we keep the thing on, he thinks he's living in real world, even though he's just a holographic projection. But he doesn't know the difference. And so as I was watching the show and the show starts to go off the air, one of the characters looks and starts to wonder himself about it, and the show ends, and suddenly I'm looking at the show, watching it on a box, and realizing that the whole thing I've just seen has taken place in a box called my television set. And then it makes me wonder, well, what about me? Am I just in some great big other box? And the current thinking right now is that is what's going on, that there are black holes and surfaces of black holes in space in which light gets projected into space and appears to us as real persons, real characters. The whole idea reduces to a thing which is so crazy that people think it's got to be insane, that there is no separation between people. There is no actual difference between you and I. Even though you're in Paris and I'm here in San Francisco, we're really one mind in communication with each other, and we are all projections of that one mind, like holograms. And that's kind of what my book gets into.
Wow.
Wow is right.
It's so wow.
Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too much. But
No. This is exciting because it questions what is reality. Then
it goes into that. Yes,
it throws us in a big loop. You're playing with our mind in there.
I'm playing with my own because I'm trying to figure it out too. And I don't, all of this is really kind of speculative, but it's based upon real physics. It's not just craziness based upon craziness. It's not just imaginary stuff. It really is based on what our current thinking is, what physicists are really thinking about how the universe gets made and gets constructed. And this seems to be what they're thinking about.
What are the implications, the immediate implications for us to realize and to read such a thing and to start to understand that there's a lot more?
Well, I think the main realization is to recognize that yourself is such a thing as a projection. So in a real sense, you're an actor on the stage which you call the world in which you exist, and you are the writer of the scenery, of the scenes you're seeing, and you're also the director who's directing you as the actor in the performance you're presently having. It's kind of like we're playing roles in a four-dimensional movie, in which the film industry is just simply a two-dimensional representation of that. But actually, each of us is not, in a sense, real. We're really the creations of mind, and the mind that's creating us is our own mind. But we only see it as we're the actor, or I can do this or do that, but I can't control everything in my life. Or blah. We have all these things that we think we can't do. But actually, what we're saying is that you have more power to change and transform yourself than you may have thought you did.
I wanted to ask you because I think you speak in your book about negative energy and what comes around goes around, and you're explaining this scientifically. Could you tell us more?
We could not understand how the universe was created and how it works if we only had quantum physics. We needed something else. And Albert Einstein in 1905 came up with something called the theory of relativity. And the theory of relativity is actually mind-boggling for many, but it actually sets limits as to how far things can go. For example, it says that the speed of light is a fundamental limit and that nothing material can go faster than the speed of light. When you take that and physics and put them all together, you get certain kinds of limitations. And one of them is something about you can't get something from nothing. If you could make particles which had negative energy, let's say, then it'd be possible to have another particle which has positive energy, and that particle could give up all of its energy to the particle with negative energy so that it would gain energy, but then the first particle would lose energy. And if it could go down to any negative energy at all, it could keep losing energy as it went down. It's like thinking of a ladder. When you're at the top of the ladder, let's say you're at rung number 20, then you walk down, then you climb down to 19, 18, 17, you come to rung 0. But there's rungs below that, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. So if we have an infinite ladder, which is all the way up in energy and all the way down in energy, if you fall off that ladder and there is negative energy rungs, then you could completely fall all the way down, and you would be giving off energy, because there'd be so much energy that would come from that fall. So, for example, if you were to fall and hit the ground, big splash, if you could fall to infinite negative energy. So one of the things that came out is there can't be such a thing as negative energy, because if there was, then the universe could collapse, because everything with positive energy would fall into the negative energy hole and nothing would exist anymore. But Richard Feynman, another physicist, came up with the notion, well, maybe we're being too restrictive. Maybe it's possible to have negative energy if the particles can go backwards in time, which is crazy. I mean, backwards in time, what does that mean? Well, it turns out that if you put a particle and set it backwards in time with negative energy, it appears to us who are moving forward in time as if it were going the other direction forward in time with positive energy. So negative energy going backwards in time appears as positive energy going forward in time. And when he came up with that idea, it became immediately clear that it was possible to have a particle go forward in time, suddenly disappear, turn around, go backward in time, disappear, and go forward in time again, kind of like the letter N, okay? And when it went backward in time, when it made the letter N, how would we see it? Well, we have to run our eyes up from the bottom, from the letter N. We would first see we would see a V where the base of the letter N, okay? We'd see a V, and there would be a particle going this way and a particle going that way forward in time, and then those two would come together at the top of the letter N, and they would collide and annihilate, and that would be creation and annihilation. So what we would say then is that the particle going backward in time is the same thing as an anti-particle going forward in time. So what we came up with is a notion that there has to be something called antimatter. Not only matter, but antimatter. Not only electrons, but positrons. So this is how the whole idea came about, all from the notion that you can't have negative energy going forward in time, but you can if it goes backward in time. So these are some of these ideas that are written, I think, explained as well as I can in my book.
Yes, and again, what are the consequences in life? What does it mean in our life?
Well, it could have. Most of these things, as we discover, can be looked at as metaphors of our own human experiences. I mean, for example, what would it mean to have annihilation and creation? Well, one thing it could mean is the following: that every time you have an idea, there's a creation. There's also another thought created, which is like the anti-thought. So if I have the thought, oh, I can do this, there's also the thought, oh, no, you can't. So every one of us, when we create something, we often create at the same time of our positive creation, what we want to do, the negative that you can't do it. We even in Walt Disney pictures, there's always there's the two characters on the shoulders. One is the angel, one is the devil. And the devil saying, you can do these things. And the other saying, no, don't do it, don't do it. So the same thing is applicable here. Creation not only implies just creating something from nothing, but it also means that you also create at the same time the negative of it, the thing which says you can't do it. And what you have to do is put your mind on one or the other. If you put your mind on you can't do it, then you can't do it. If you put your mind on you can do it, then you can. So I think it has some implication there.
Us are not living our highest potential. Constantly, we're not living to the fullest. We're not living that best possibility. There's infinite possibilities that exist, but we're not choosing this most of the time, at least. There seems to be some kind of coherence between the choice we make, the heart, the mind, all of that I'm trying to understand more from you, what kind of
You think there's
conclusions you made.
You think there's some obstacle in your way?
On all human beings, yeah.
Do you think that we all are limited? That when we try to do something immediately comes in and says you can't do it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think those voices you were describing, there is those voices, and
Well,
and
we
it would be
understand.
great that if we would all the time choose the best path, you know?
Actually, the problem is that we always do choose what we believe to be the best path.
Yes.
That's what we do. And sometimes the best path for us is don't do that.
Right.
Don't go in that direction. Our survival, we think about how we live and what, should I eat that or not eat that? I don't know. Escargot, je n'aime pas escargot. Or, oh, oui, j'aime beaucoup l'escargot. Well, it depends on how we particularly view eating snails. I happen to like them, but some of the people eat them and they feel sick. The snails don't make them sick, but they have in their mind that it's going to make them sick, so they don't eat them. Mm-hmm. We have reasons for doing what we do, yes. And a lot of it is based upon our past conditioning, what we believe was the right thing to do at the right time. We have people who believe very strongly that people that love people of the same sex are somehow evil and should be cast into hell because they're homosexual. There are people that believe that one race is superior to another race. There are all kinds of craziness in people's minds. And the thing that if I could teach anything to people would be to not take yourself so seriously. One of the things, I was once on the Larry King show and he asked me how he could overcome depression. First of all, I never knew he was depressed about anything because he seems like such a bubbling type of personality. And so I was surprised that he would ask me this question. So I said to him, well, ask yourself this question. Who is feeling depressed? But don't answer the question. For example, Larry King says, I'm depressed. So he would say to the question answer, who is depressed? He would say, well, I am depressed. And I said, no, you can't do that. What you have to do is keep asking yourself the question without giving the answer. The mere fact that you can question such a thing as this feeling disrupts the process of the feeling and opens up the door for another feeling to come in. If you don't keep the question burning in your mind, who is having this experience? Who is feeling this? If you don't keep asking yourself, and you have to practice it. You can't just do it once and say, oh, it's all over now. No, you got to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. After a while, you begin to identify with the person asking who is having this experience and not with the experience itself. And the depression eases, it goes away. And finally, it may never even occur again. Or if it does, the same process can come in and you will automatically start asking who's having this experience. As long as you don't answer the question, you'll get out of it.
Very interested to hear practically what quantum physics, how quantum physics can help us in our daily lives to live our full potential, to live the juiciest life possible. And you're saying one of the things is remain in the questioning. That's one thing.
Yes, because remaining in the question is complementary to answering the question, or to saying we have in quantum physics something called the principle of complementarity, and you can't ask a question and have the answer to the question at the same time. In physics, we say you can't observe the momentum of an object and the position of the object at the same time. If you're observing momentum, you're in the flow. If you're observing position, you're no longer in the flow. So you're focusing on a particular thing. That's the answer. Whereas in the flow, I'm in the flow. I'm not answering. I'm not saying what I am. I'm not saying what I'm not. I'm in the flow. As soon as you answer the question, you've pinned it down, and that fixates and fixes you. So quantum physics helps us to understand why that's true.
I love it, because when I interviewed Gay Hendricks, I don't know if you know him, but he's kept on telling me, question yourself at the beginning of the day and just say, I wonder how great today is going to be. And he keeps on having all those different questions and keep on opening up. And it does bring fantastic things that it opens up our genius. There's something, there's the magic that comes, and we start to become magician.
Yes, that's true.
Do you think there's such a thing of magicians of life? How would you describe a magician?
Well, a magician is somebody who knows that there is no set answer to anything, and that there is no actual total cause and effect relationship between what happens and what happened before. That the past is being created as much as the future. And once you get yourself into that position of creating past, present, and future, rather than just being a victim of the past, then you become a magician.
I love it. I'm really, I had a last little question, because one of your bestseller was Taking the Quantum Leap.
Right.
Do you think there is a leap that humanity should take right now?
Well, that's an interesting question, whether there is such a thing as a leap that we need to take right now.
Or a leap that we could take, each of us individually?
I would say that we are moving at the right pace, that things are happening at the right pace. People are becoming smarter. People are learning more. People are becoming more aware of their environments and very aware that we're now planetarily aware. We're moving at the right pace. We don't have to make sudden, huge changes. We just have to keep heart and keep faith that we're moving in the right direction, and we will continue to move in the right direction. It's really simple. We don't have to start shaking the world to make it understand. We just have to just continue that what we're doing. Become aware of our neighbors. Become aware of the planet. My goal, if I have a goal at all, would be simply this. If you are born, you have certain inalienable rights. One right you have is the right to have adequate housing, adequate food, adequate water, in other words, an adequate air. You need to have basic human qualities, and with food, air, water, and shelter as basic things that you're entitled to just by being a human being. I think that if we each take that message seriously and realize that as long as large parts of our world are without those things, there are things that we need to think about how we can make those things real for those people that are without it. Because we're all connected together, and as long as people are suffering in this way of not having basic human rights fulfilled, each of us is also suffering because we're all connected. And we can't be fulfilled in our lives, no matter how rich or how much wealth or how much food or love or whatever we have in our lives coming to us. None of us are going to feel fulfilled as long as there's that hunger existing elsewhere. So we're all moving towards that, and we have to become more aware of it. And the planet is another thing, becoming planetarily aware of what's going on in the world. Same thing. As long as we're causing undue suffering to our planet in some way, then we have to be aware that we are feeling the consequences. We may get immediate gain by what we do, but in the long run, we pay the price. We pay. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. We pay the price. So that's what we have to be aware of.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this time, and thank you for this interview. And I look forward to seeing
Well,
you in Europe, possibly en France.
the question without somebody asking the question. So the two go hand in hand. And that's what interested me. How do you bring mind, consciousness, and matter and energy into an understanding which I think once we have, can improve our lives, make us happier individuals. And so that was really why I got into this whole business. And in discovering just how the universe is constructed, I came to the conclusion that it's very clear that it's not just an unintelligent mishmash of random Darwinian, totally chaoticness, but there's an order or a intelligence which must be present in order for this random, chaotic disorderliness to become not random, to become orderly, to become conscious, to become aware, to become alive. And so that's what led me into this whole business.
Yeah, tell us more about the quantum field theory. What does it say?
Well, in my latest book, The Time Loops and Space Twist, I got into this whole notion of what is called the quantum field theory. And what physicists are discovering right now is so bizarre, it almost sounds like we're talking about science fiction and not really science anymore. What they're discovering now is that there seems to be a field that comes into existence when, now get this, when space and time both come into existence, and that this field is something like a field of mind. It's not a field of matter, but it's a field of mind. And that mind field has to interact or play with the light and space and time that came into existence at the time of the Big Bang. And in so doing, it starts to emerge something we call an orderly universe and a consciousness, which begins to perceive it all coming out. So the book, Space-Time and my book, Time Loops and Space Twist, goes into just how does that come about? What's making, how does the mind and how does that all come in together? And the current research, right, my big question was how and why is the world the way it is? Why do people behave the way they do? Why is the world constructed the way it's constructed? And to answer those questions, I became very curious about how matter and energy and space and time all are related together. And that led me into what is called quantum physics. So for me, the question was, how do you connect up my everyday experience, my little life or my big life, to the events which are making the universe appear as it is? And the question leads one into naturally thinking about, why is there mind? Not only why is there something rather than nothing, but why is there a Dr. Quantum here to ask, why is there something rather than nothing? So there's two parts to the question. It's not just the question of why there is something rather than nothing, but why is there somebody who can ask that question? Because both of them are really kind of together. You can't have the question without somebody asking the question, and you can't have the asking of
Hello, Dr. Quantum.
good morning, bon après-midi, bonne nuit.
It's good to speak to you in French. Are we going to do this in French?
Peut-être, mais je préfère English.
Okay.
I would prefer to speak in English. My French is not so good.
I understand, and I'm sure a lot of people watching right now are agreeing. Let's do this in English. The topic
That's exactly what happened when I first started to teach in Paris. I was teaching at Alliance Française. I went to Alliance Française, and then afterwards I was teaching my class in quantum physics at the University of Paris Sud en Alsace, or Seville. And while I was teaching, I was speaking French, and the students came up to me and they said, "Oh, Professor, would you please speak in English? We don't understand your French very well."
Yeah, and the topic
I was very
is
insulted.
and the topic is already, it's for
complicated.
It's complicated enough. So let's not add another shift to it. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today because, of course, you're a famous quantum physician, and I really enjoyed interviewing Joe Dispenza and Amit Goswami and others that were featured also in the Bleep, a movie that has been really, creating such a boom and an explosion of knowledge and of interest for this topic and this subject that is so important to understand. And I know that your latest book that is called Time Loops and Space Twist, you really put an emphasis on explaining what is time, what is space, what is matter. Tell us why those are really important questions and things that you wanted to bring out to the world.
Well, it's sometimes difficult to relate things like the very things we are made of to our everyday dramatic experiences. And that's basically what I'm trying to do.